If I were to ask you what's in a pond, most would think ducks, fish, frogs, cattails, and some other things. All of these organisms have something in common. They're all macroscopic. Macroscopic organisms are those that can be seen without a microscope. They're not microscopic. In the sample of pond water from the lab, there were hundreds of a type of crustacean called Daphnia swimming around in the water. Despite their small size, the fact that we could see them without a microscope makes them macroscopic, and there are thousands more species just like them in pond water. Looking more closely at the pond, there are microscopic organisms such as phytoplankton. Phytoplankton are free-floating plants like algae that are photoautotrophs. Photoautotrophs are organisms that produce their own food using the process of photosynthesis. They're the base of the food chain. Next up are zooplankton, and these guys are free-floating animals, an example of which I'll give in a minute, that are heterotrophs. Heterotrophs are organisms that are incapable of producing their own food, so they rely on other organisms to be sustained. Tardigrades, also called water bears, are one species of zooplankton that can survive in nearly all of the Earth's conditions. They survive 10 days of complete exposure to space, can withstand temperatures between negative 458 degrees Fahrenheit to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. They did just fine after 30 years without food or water and suffered no damage after being exposed to 1,000 times more radiation than any other animal on the planet can handle. They're completely amazing and are among one of the thousands of plankton living in a single drop of water. Ponds are teeming with life on the micro and macroscopic levels, and all of those organisms are producing their own waste. If I were to ask you which water source had more bacteria, a stream, a river, or a pond, you would answer a pond, because ponds are stagnant. They're unmoving pools of water that fill with materials over time with no way to expel them. So what's a pond to do? Enter bacteria. Bacteria are the pond's natural decomposers that break down organic waste like the ammonia that fish eliminate, which reduces algae blooms and contributes to maintaining order in the pond's ecosystem. On average, there are 184 different types of bacteria in a pond, and only a small fraction of those are hazardous. The test that we used in class identifies these strains of bacteria via sugar test. The bacteria ingest the sugars in the vial, which interact with their digestive enzymes to produce a yellow substance that's eliminated by the bacteria, which becomes visible after about 48 hours. Unfortunately, the test came back negative because of our own errors, but one look at the bacteria that we cultivated in the petri dishes tells a different story. We even grew E. coli. Speaking of E. coli, it's one of those harmful types of bacteria that typically comes from fecal contamination. It causes symptoms such as fever, diarrhea, and more rarely, stroke and kidney failure. It's also antibiotic resistant, another factor that makes it more dangerous. Salmonella, the reason you couldn't eat the cookie dough when you were younger, is another dangerous bacteria that this test looks for, and like E. coli, it comes from fecal contamination. Eggs are commonly recognized as a source of salmonella, but it can spread from a barrage of other animals, both warm and cold-blooded. Symptoms include fever, diarrhea, and vomiting. These strains of bacteria are responsible for food poisoning and dysentery that kill over 600,000 people worldwide each year. Bringing it back to the ecosystem. The balance of bacteria in a pond is crucial. If any event disrupts bacterial populations, the entire ecosystem may collapse. If the strain E. coli became more prevalent in a pond, other populations would decrease, like the strain that metabolizes ammonia. The increase in ammonia would allow for algae blooms that kill zooplankton, which aquatic insects rely on. The ammonia and lack of food resources would cause the fish and aquatic plants to die, and eventually the ecosystem would cease to exist. Improper waste disposal and management may initially affect only the microscopic bacteria or plankton, but they're equally vital to ponds, even if they aren't visible to the naked eye.